Well, we're now in the Salle Laubrouste of the French National Library, a library which contains some 14 million books, many of them historic records of this country's most important heritage sites. And this very library has been earmarked for a major restoration work due to be completed in the year 2020. Well, to find out more about it, I'm joined now by one of France's architects-in-chief of the country's historic monuments, Jean-François Lagneau. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. You played a major role in the restoration of this library, in this magnificent room, which is now complete. What was your role?
In this case, it meant both restoring this room, which was first inaugurated in 1868 and hadn't been cleaned up since, so not for more than 150 years, and also modernizing the room to the needs of today's readers. So there were two tasks. On the one hand, just cleaning. That enabled us to bring back the splendor of the colors that you can see. And at the same time, to adapt it to modern needs. In Laubrouste's time, there was no electric light. They had to work using only daylight.
When we talk about restoration, are we talking about the same notion, the same concept, the same goals in all countries? Or do you think France has its own way of restoring buildings?
No, I think we all have mostly the same idea of what restoration is. But it's true that each country has its own vision of how the work should take place. In France and in the West in general, we put importance on the authenticity of the materials. That's to say, we try to keep as much of the original material as possible. That doesn't happen in the Far East. In these countries, it's mainly the design that counts, design and function.
How do you prioritize which buildings you're going to restore and which ones you're not going to restore? Because we've just looked at a report about a church in the Landes department which is held together with cables. Why isn't that church from the 12th century getting the care it deserves?
That's obviously the big problem. But in France, we have the National Heritage Agency that keeps track of all the buildings that are protected, as they are of historical importance, and they know what the emergencies are. Also, clearly, they have to find enough money to pay for these restorations. They find the financing through the state, which subsidizes most historical monuments, and also through the owners. The owners are often local governments or individuals who don't always have enough money to do the restoration. That's the main problem.
Just lastly, is there one monument, either in Paris or anywhere else in France, close to your heart that you would really like to see restored to its former glory?
For a long time, I would have said the Tour Saint-Jacques, but I restored the Tour Saint-Jacques about 10 years ago. So now there's a building that I'm going to start work on, and I have been waiting for years to do this. It's the church Saint-Gervais-Saint-Protais. It's a beautiful 17th century church in the center of Paris.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Jean-François Lagneau, one of France's architects-in-chief of the country's historic monuments. Thank you. We're going to head now to the northern suburbs of Paris, to the Saint-Denis Basilica, a magnificent example of Gothic architecture and the burial place of numerous French kings and queens. Well, until the middle of the 19th century, it had a magnificent spire which was dismantled after a powerful storm. But now, 170 years later, there are plans to rebuild that spire. But as we're about to see, it's a highly political issue.
The necropolis of French kings is still standing, although not all of it. Saint-Denis Basilica, a jewel of Gothic art, lost its upper part in 1847. Called the Spire, it stood 86 meters tall for 7 centuries, until it was struck by lightning and had to be disassembled stone by stone for safety reasons.
We have most of the stones. We've identified them in recent years. We also have measures taken at the time the spire was still standing, and the assembly drawings made when the spire was taken down.
Jacques Moulin takes this much interest in the Basilica Tower because he has a plan to reassemble it, a €13 million project. A committee was created last year to gather support. Its founders say private donations and visitors' contributions will be enough to fund the project. The committee's president, author Eric Orsena, cites similar experiences: La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona and the Hermione ship, a project he initiated.
There will be great enthusiasm, more than for the Hermione. It's a basilica. And so many people from different fields will be involved in the project, like stonemasons. Imagine school children and people of all ages going to the site and discovering traditions from the 12th and 13th centuries. It's like living history.
But there is a problem. State heritage experts are questioning the legitimacy of the plan. The Historical Monuments Commission voted against it in January.
What will happen if the project is launched but there aren't enough donations and visitors don't come? Who will pay for this whim? Taxpayers, local authorities, or the Fund for French Historic Monuments? That's the problem. Genuine historic sites are crumbling, including the Basilica, whose stained glass needs to be restored. Truly valuable sites are neglected because of this project.
But experts are not the ones to decide. And in February, the government approved the spire rebuilding plan. Former President François Hollande chipped the first stone in March.
This project is meaningful because it unites people in Saint-Denis. It's beautiful because it allows new populations living in this area to truly own this ancestral heritage monument.
The Culture Ministry has launched studies to explore whether the project is viable. To pay for those reports, it has used public funds, as dreaded by the experts.
Well, that's it for this week's edition of France in Focus. We're going to leave you here at the French National Library in the Rondel Gallery, which, as you can see, is home to thousands of books, hundreds of years old. And it isn't actually open to the public, but we thought we'd give you a sneak peek in any case. Thanks for watching. Stay with us here on France 24.